Hey everyone, it's SmitePants Chess here. We're looking at game 104 in the Leela Stockfish match in the CCC11 finals. 30 minutes on the clock each with a 5-second increment. And this game, the opening book was e4 with c6 from black, and white plays b3. So we're into a Caro-Kann with b3. Play continued with d5, e takes d5, c takes d5, and then bishop to b2, knight to c6, G3 and E5, followed by bishop G2 and bishop to E6. This was the end of the book, and Leela continued on with knight to F3, so already hitting this E5 pawn. Black defends with F6. After castles, queen D7, rook E1, knight G to E7 and C4. Already, actually, my evaluation on my computer, Stockfish gives this as winning for black already. Or maybe winning is a strong word, but certainly better. Maybe black should take here. D takes c4 looks very nice. Followed by maybe if b takes c4, then black maybe can castle. Knight to a3 and knight to f5, and black is doing very well indeed out of the opening already. However, I don't think if black takes on c4, I don't think white will take. I think white may play knight to a3. And we get into a bit of complications here with c takes b3 and white plays d4. The point is after castles, and let's say a takes b3 here, if black takes on d4, white can play a move like b4, and all of a sudden white is now winning this game. The point is that white's going to play b5, and then recapture on d4 with a knight or bishop. And this just puts all white pieces into an excellent position, and they're very dynamic in this game. Instead of taking on d4 though, black could play e4, attacking the knight. After rook takes e4, knight d5, again both sides pretty much even out of this opening, with equal material, but I think again black's got slightly better structure. If we go back to the game though, instead of taking on c4, Stockfish actually played d4, just locking everything down and locking his bishop on b2 down. Because after d3 and knight g6 and a3, bishop e7, white can play b4, has an amazing queen side advantage, but then black all of a sudden starts attacking white on the king side. Bishop h3, try and trade bishops, bishop h1, and a kingside attack with h5, preparing the move h4, and the knight's actually pretty nicely placed on g6 to help this pawn play h5. Leela continued with knight b to d2, believing in her position. h4 is played, and then white goes c5, making room for the c4 square for the knight to jump into. Queen f5 attacks d3, and Leela plays an interesting move, rook to e4. So just blocks the queen out of the game. And actually this rook is really nicely placed because it can't really be attacked at the moment. The queen's got to move back or move somewhere before a bishop or a pawn can move to f5 to attack this rook and kick it off that square. Stockfish continued with king to f8. Leela played knight c4. And actually now I actually prefer white's position over black's. I think white's got slowly creeping into the game. They've got a nice pawn structure on the queen side, and all of a sudden black's attack has just been really blunted. I'm not sure what your opinions are, but let me know in the comments if you feel this as well. Rook to d8 was played by Stockfish, guarding this d6 square from the knight. Leela continued with queen to d2. So in the game here, Stockfish played queen c8. Bishop g4 was actually given by my Stockfish, attacking this knight on f3. And play continued queen e2 and then queen h5, pinning this knight on f3. After rook e1, bishop f5, attacking the rook. b5 can be played by white. H takes g3, f takes g3, and then knight b8 is given by Stockfish. Knight to d6, bishop takes d6, c takes d6. And after, let's say, king g8 for black, this is actually given as equal by my Stockfish at home. If black ever takes on e4, bishop takes e4, then white will probably take with the queen. And again, this is equal as well, because after b6 is a perpetual with queen to b7, knight to d7, and then white should play bishop takes d4. After e takes d4, here's a perpetual, queen c7 attacking the rook on d8. If black plays king f7, then queen c4 check, and if the king goes back, there's queen c7. And this is the perpetual, so it's a dead draw. So maybe this is why Stockfish didn't play bishop g4, instead they played queen to c8 instead. Leela continued with rook c1, and then king g8 is played, and Leela's idea now is very simple, just to launch these pawns up. She plays a4. Black plays bishop f5, attacking the rook, and the rook retreats to e2. It was actually possible to play rook takes h4. Stockfish really liked this move. After knight takes h4, knight takes, rook takes, g takes and bishop h3, though I feel like black is actually in a better position than white now. The king is very susceptible to attack for white. So obviously Leela didn't go in for that, so it's a bit suicidal. She played rook e2 instead, a more safe move. Stockfish continued with rook to d7, and then Leela plays b5. It's hitting the knight, and it's forced to jump back. And now bishop to a3 to defend the c5 pawn. Black can't actually take this pawn because if bishop takes c5, then white can play bishop takes c5, and if queen takes c5, white can play knight takes e5 with a scuppered attack on the queen, and now white's also attacking the rook, so they'll definitely win material if black goes in for this. So instead of taking the pawn, Stockfish just played knight to f7, and Leela continued with rook to e1, so just keeping their position even more safe, linking their rooks together. Rook h6 from Stockfish, and now Leela goes in for the jugular, b6. The point is that now black can't take this pawn because their knight takes and they're forking the queen and the rook. So after b6, Stockfish is forced then to defend their a7 pawn with queen to b8, and Leela just plays a5. Stockfish takes on b6, Leela recaptures with the c pawn, and all of a sudden black's position is looking very precarious because his bishop on h1 is an absolute monster now, and black's got a lot of defending to do to try and subdue it. Basically black has to put their bishop back to e6 and then to d5 to blunt this bishop, otherwise white is definitely getting one of these passed pawns into a queen. So bishop e6 is played by Stockfish, bishop takes e7 is played, and then black is a bit crafty, plays h takes g3. This is because if here white plays bishop a3 trying to save the piece, then black can play g takes h2, and if knight takes h2, play e4. The point is the queen is coming in attacking h2. If white plays some move like f4, black can play e3, attacking the queen, and if white starts giving the material back with knight takes e3, d takes, rook takes, black can just play knight takes f4, and now actually black has a winning position. So if we go back to the game, h takes g3 has just been played by black. Instead of trying to keep the piece, white just plays h takes g3 and knight takes e7. So just a trade of pieces occurs. Leela plays bishop to g2. I'm guessing this is because they didn't want Stockfish to sack the rook for the bishop, which is a mega piece at the moment. Bishop d5 was played by Stockfish, so now these two bishops are on equal terms. Queen b4 was played, and then bishop to c6. So all of a sudden black has relative safety. But let's see what Leela can muster here. She plays knight to d2, the queen went to e8, and then white played rook c5. The point is after rook d8 they're going to double the rooks on the c file, rook a8 is played and then queen to b3. So Leela's just getting active with her white pieces, pinning this knight on f7 so the king moves to f8, and then Leela just comes in to knight to e4. I think it'd be crazy for black to take that knight off because the bishop on c6 is actually doing quite a good job at the moment. Instead Stockfish plays g5, trying to hit out at the king side of white, and Leela just locks everything down with g4, stopping any f5 ideas. Stockfish goes knight d8, Leela goes knight f to d2, and then queen f7 is played, and there's a trade of queens. And now Leela does actually go in for the kill. She plays knight d6 with check, king goes to e6, and now Leela does a little sacrifice. I wonder if you can spot this. So all of a sudden the knight's attacking b7, this bishop's opened up as well, and they've got two rooks on the c file. She plays rook takes c6. So this defends the knight on d6 for a move anyway, so black is pretty much forced to take this with b takes c6, and now they play b7, attacking the rook on a8. So in the game Stockfish should actually take this pawn off, knight takes b7. If black goes some move like rook to b8 trying to be clever, then white can just play a6, defends the pawn. If king takes d6, white can play a7. After king c7 they're going to get a queen, a8 queen, knight takes b7 and queen a2. So in this position it's dead win for white. White's got a queen for the rook, so Leela will definitely be able to convert this into a victory. She has much better pieces as well. So if we go back to the game, b7 has just been played, so Stockfish has to give back material. Knight takes b7, knight takes b7, and then king to d7 to defend the c6 pawn. Leela plays knight c4, preparing to play knight b6 check with a fork against the king and the rook. So king c7, attacking the knight. The knight jumps backwards. The rooks are protected together, and Leela goes in for the open file with rook b1. Stockfish plays rook b8, and there's a trade of rooks. Leela plays knight d7, king c7, and then takes the pawn f6. And all of a sudden, black's position looks like it's in tatters because the knight's attacking this pawn on e5. Of course, Stockfish defends, but then just bishop e4, attacking the knight again. Knight to f4, and Leela's got this under control. She plays knight to h5. After rook e8, there's a trade of knights, king g2, c5, and then king f3. So white's got two pieces for the rook, and black really doesn't have any compensation. Rook e6 is played by Stockfish, bishop d5, rook e1, and then a6. Rook a1 gets behind the pawn, but Leela just sacrifices this pawn, gets the king into an ideal position. The rook takes it, and then just king f5, and these pawns are pretty much lost now. So f3, king takes g5, king d7. After a series of other moves, white takes another pawn, and is suddenly two pawns up with two pieces for the rook. This is an easy win now for white. So Stockfish just gives back more material. But interestingly, Leela goes in for a weird endgame again, so we'll see what happens. She starts pushing her pawns up. This is an easy victory for anyone. But once she gets a queen, she sacks, and then the rook. Stockfish takes this pawn with the rook, knight takes, and all of a sudden Leela's got to do bishop and knight checkmate. So we'll see how she does it. So in bishop and knight checkmate, you want to get the king into the corner of the bishop that you've got. So Stockfish has played it here where they've got their king in the dark squares, but white wants them to go this way into this corner for their white squared bishop. So king b2. This is the best way to defend if you've got no pieces. Just try and keep your king in the corner, the opposite coloured squared corner of the bishop. But Leela now gets into a really great position. So this is the position you want. This is the ideal setup for bishop and knight checkmate. So bishop b1. This stops the king going to a2. So after king a4, Leela plays this correctly. Knight to d4. Stops the black king escaping. So it goes up again. If it goes the other way, so let's say king a3, white can just play knight to b5 check. The king's in check. The only square is a4. And then white should just play king c4. And king a5 is the only square again. And white can just play king to c5. The point is that now the black king is closer to the square that you want it on. If it goes this way, let's say king a4, you can just check and it's forced backwards again. And then you just repeat, let's say knight to d6 again. The king is forced to a6. And then it's just a matter of technique. You have to play bishop to b3. And if the king goes to a5, you can play knight to b7. Again, the bishop locks out the king. And then king a6, king c6, king a7, bishop c4. And then it's just a matter of technique until you get the ideal position with checkmate. So back in the game, instead of going king a3, Stockfish has played king a5. Leela played king to c4, king b6, knight to b5, covering these two squares, stopping the king escaping. And if black, let's say, goes king c6 here, trying to escape again, white can play bishop to f5, and then black's forced backwards because all these two pieces just limit black from escaping this little box you've got going. King b6, bishop e4, closing the box even further. King a6, king c5, and if king a5, we've seen this before, bishop c2 locks out the king, king a6, and then knight to d6. If the king goes back, there's knight to b7, king a6, and then again it's just a matter of technique. So again, this check, the king can't go to a5, so it's forced in the corner, and again it's just a matter of technique until you can checkmate the black king. So back to the game, instead of king c6, Stockfish went for king b7. This is actually more interesting. And Leela just plays bishop f5, locks out the king. King c6 though. I've never really actually witnessed this type of position before, but Leela plays it correctly. Just bishop e6. Just waits for black to go backwards. King b6. Again, bishop d7 makes the box even smaller. King a5. And then knight to d6. So the king can't go to a4. It could go to b6, which is what happens. Then Leela plays knight to e8, locks out the king goes to a5, and then there's king c5. The king can't get to a4, so it's forced in the corner. And Leela just plays a few more moves, and actually has a nice checkmate. I've never seen this done in this way before, but Leela plays it brilliantly with knight to b5, Bishop and Knight Checkmate. A very nice game. So it seems as though Stockfish did have a king side attack, but it wasn't good enough, and Leela just exploited this weaknesses and just managed to have this nice rucksack on c6 and convert this into a win with this amazing pawn storm on the queen side. If you take anything from this game though, I would advise that you learn how to do Bishop and Knight Checkmate. It's really useful. You never want to be in a situation where you're playing an opponent and you don't know how to do it. I've seen a female grandmaster who couldn't complete this, and it's quite embarrassing. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed my analysis and commentary of this game. If you did, maybe drop me a like, comment or subscribe. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video. I believe there's 3 more games I'm going to cover between Leela and Stockfish, and then we'll move on to something new. Thank you very much.